So, Kevin, thank you for your time. We're very, very grateful. You, along with director Roger Michell, you've produced Elizabeth, this documentary about Queen Elizabeth II that coincides with her 70th Jubilee. Now, obviously, Her Majesty, one of the most photographed, most filmed women in the world ever, I would imagine. So you must have had tens, if not hundreds of thousands of hours to go through. How did yourself and Roger go about that?
Slowly is the short answer. I mean, I guess one of the criteria if you're making an archive documentary is you've got to be convinced there's going to be enough archive of your chosen subjects, and that was never going to be an issue with the Queen. No, you're right. I mean, I think we wanted to do it, and Roger particularly wanted to do it because she is the most famous woman in the world. You know, she's 96. I mean, the oldest bit of footage in this film is over 90 years old. I mean, it's like looking at it's not looking at the birth of photography or cinematography, but you know what I mean? It feels like, you know, you're really reaching back to the early days of kind of newsreel almost. So it was an extraordinary amount of material. And yeah, we could still be here watching more material now if we wanted to, but you know, we had to kind of come up with organizing principles and then try and hone our search a bit as we went on. So you know, at the end of the day, we had enough for what we needed to do, I think. And you know, it's not proposing to be definitive in any way. It's proposing to be what it is, which is a wonderful montage.
Well, you have condensed a whole load of footage down to, you know, quite a breezy 90 minutes.
90 minutes, but it has I think it's over 1,100 separate bits of footage in, so that, you know, in terms of the bits of paper I've had to do, there's like over 1,000 bits of paper to go with all these clips.
So with all that exists, was there any footage that you had trouble getting hold of, or that you couldn't get hold of, or that proved problematic?
Well, I don't. You look, there's probably more footage out there than we've managed to source. Yeah, there are particular issues with some of the footage. For example, you know, there's some footage in the film which is owned or controlled by the royal household and by the palace, because either it's home movies or it's footage that they allowed particular access to a film crew in the past to get. And so they've maintained some control over a lot of those bits of film. And there's probably 15 minutes or so of film in ours that falls into that category. So that required, you know, a proper discussion with, you know, with the press department and Buckingham Palace and with the royal household. So, you know, that was probably our most diplomatic kind of piece of work that we had to do in terms of sourcing our archive.
So, with the palace obviously having an obvious interest in it, have they seen it? Have you had any reaction from them? And how cooperative were they?
Well, I mean, their original, you know, their big thing is the context in which you're going to use whatever footage they control. And obviously that was a bit of a problem for us, because although we could describe what our intentions were and what kind of film we were hoping to make, we couldn't give them precise context at the beginning. We couldn't say, if you give us this bit of footage, we're going to put it next to this and before this, you know, because we didn't know that until we started making the film. So in a way, we had to say, look, you've just got to trust us. And then when we've made the film, we'll come back and show it to you. And then you can, you know, either you'll give us the permission for the things you're letting us use, or you won't. And so that's what we did. We made the film, we took it and showed it to the press secretary at Buckingham Palace, and I'm pleased to say he's given permission, and the royal household have given permission for that footage. Who else has seen the film? I have no idea. There is a copy in the palace. I wrote a very nice letter saying we would be humbled and honoured if Her Majesty wished to view it, but I don't know if she's a Stormzy fan or not, so we'll wait to hear.
Well, if she's jumping out of helicopters with James Bond, I'm sure she's
exactly. You know.
Yeah. But there's also I really like the documentary, but in terms of your liaison with the palace and getting their cooperation, there are obviously some contentious and controversial aspects in it which you don't shy away from. That must have been quite sweaty palms for you with regard to that.
Well, we look, when we went to them, we said, look, the focus of this film is not going to be the missteps of, you know, the children or the failed marriages of the children. You know, that's not what we're interested in. We're interested in, you know, Elizabeth, the person, the monarch, you know, what the monarch represents, you know, what it is to think about her as a queen and as a mother and as a person. So, but it would have been dishonest not to have referenced those things. So we always said to them, look, we will reference some of the problems, because part of the Queen's job has been to have to manage those problems, both as a mother and as as the monarch, you know. So to that extent, you know, we hope we reference them lightly enough. And to be honest, a lot of that's pretty familiar ground. You know, I don't think the world needs another documentary about the death of Diana, or another documentary about, you know, the failed marriages of some of the children of the royal family. I mean, you know, it's not what we were interested in.
What I did notice, one of the many things I liked about it was, and it only occurred to me about 20 minutes into the documentary, that it's divided up into chapters, but at no point do you use any voiceover.
No, that was always very deliberate. So the original pitch for the documentary was very straightforward, which was that it would be relentlessly and boldly anti-chronological. It would not have any commentary. It would not have any guiding voiceover. It would not have talking heads of pundits telling you the context or what to think about anything. And although obviously there are people talking on the archive, we didn't shoot anything new for this film whatsoever. So, you know, anything you see where people are talking about the Queen is sort of in the context of the historical moment that they're talking about it, or about their interaction with her. And it's not us now trying to mediate your response to that. So that was enshrined early on in the principles of what we were doing, really. And Roger was really clear about that. You know, that was his original pitch was always, it won't feel like other royal documentaries, which tend to be very carefully navigated and, you know, either dirt digging or referential or somewhere in between, you know.
So Roger, unfortunately no longer with us, and I understand was a long-term friend of yours. Who came to who about the project?
Well, he rang me, I think it was during the first lockdown, and said, well, we're not going to be able to make our film this year, are we? You know, they're closing all the studios. So what should we do? We need to do something. Should we do an archive documentary? And we thought, well, you know, that's a good idea. You don't have to shoot anything. You don't have to go anywhere. You just sit there and all this archive comes at you. And it was his idea to do the Queen. That was his number one on his list. Let's make it about the Queen. And I was a little skeptical, to be honest. At first, I thought, how do you make a theatrical documentary about the Queen that feels unique and different, and not like, you know, the Channel 5 documentaries that are on pretty well every Saturday night in this country? But he was very clear about that. So, you know, I think what we started out to do, I hope we've done it, really. You know, it feels, particularly now in the middle of all the build up to the Jubilee, it feels as though we're the kind of counter-programming in some way.
Yeah. So as you know, long-term friends, I always kind of wonder the wisdom of doing a project like this with friends, because as a producer, Roger's the director, there's bound to be moments of disagreements. Who had the final say, the final cut, if you like?
Oh, he had the final cut. The director always has the final cut. Well, he always had the final cut in anything we did together. I mean, look, we had, there weren't really disagreements. There were occasionally just frustrations, because there would be, you know, for example, we put out an appeal to the public to try and hope that people had stuff in their attics that no one had ever seen before. And in fact, they don't, probably. Yeah. Certainly it didn't come our way if they did. You know, a lot of people got in touch who had very extensive collections of royal tea towels and mugs, but nobody seemed to have gold dust footage in their attics. And of course, it's only recently that people carry around the technology to be able to record the Queen at close quarters if they happen to be lucky enough to be near her. So that wasn't really a surprise. So there were occasional frustrations like that. There were, we had a lot of discussions about the music, which obviously is very eclectic and bold, and quite expensive. And there was one track that we just couldn't get permission to use, which was, well, one song, and we didn't even want the original artist's recording of it, but it was obviously the Sex Pistols, God Save the Queen.
Yeah.
Which was in the original cut of the film in an acoustic version, but the Sex Pistols have all fallen out with each other on this issue, so they did not grant us permission, sadly.
So Roger, the loss of Roger to British filmmaking, I think, is immense. His films were they're such good films, and The Duke, his last feature, is such I really enjoyed that film. What are your memories of working with Roger over the years, and maybe the last time you saw him?
Well, the last time I saw him was the day we finished the final mix of this film, which was the day he died. I mean, we were literally in the morning, we were in a mixing theatre in Soho reviewing the final mix, and he gave his final set of notes and then went to pick up his daughters from school, and I never saw him again. I just got a call the next morning saying terrible news. So it's been a terrible loss, I think, personally. It's been a terrible loss to the British film industry, because I know he had 5 or 6 projects he was actively engaged in and wanting to make, some with me, some with other people. I mean, I think this film has the qualities of all his films. It's witty and it's warm. It's got a bit of mischief. It's sort of interested in other people in the best kind of human way.
Yeah.
And it's curious. I think his work was marked out by a kind of curiosity about how human beings behave, and how odd they can be and how strange they can be sometimes. He delighted in sort of the strangeness of others to some extent. And I think this film has a lot of the qualities that he brought to all his dramas.
Yeah, I was going to say, I think that's very much a signature of many of his feature films. I mean, can you talk anything about projects that you were working on with Roger next?
Well, for example, we had 2 or 3, but we had a project based on a book called Little Darlings by Melanie Goulding, which he had written a screenplay for, and I don't know what will happen to that. I'll probably in time I'll probably show it to a few other directors, but it's going to be hard possibly for them to read a script written by a director colleague who's no longer with us. I don't know. It's been a bit soon to think about that, but yeah, it's sad. And I think, he was at the height of his powers. There was no diminution of powers. He was absolutely at the top of his game, and very, very kind of full of energy and creativity. So it has been terrible. And I don't think, obviously I worked with him over 30 years and he was a close friend, but I think he was one of the best film directors this country has seen in the last 30, 40, 50 years. And I don't think he often gets the credit, because he didn't kind of work in one genre. His focus was pretty eclectic, everything from period drama to rom-com to, the little films we've made with Hanif Qureshi, to, an Ealing comedy like The Duke. His range was wide.
Yeah.
But, I think, there was never a false note. I mean, whatever he was doing was always perfectly orchestrated and always had perfect pitch. You never thought, no, that doesn't feel right in this film, because the films always had a kind of perfect integrity, whatever they were and whatever genre they were in. And there's not many directors who could say that.
Your own career as a producer is extensive and quite eclectic as well. Your back catalogue, and I was having a look and I thought, Wow, that's quite some back catalog to have. You've got the History Boys in there. You've got Mr. The Terry Gilliam film. I can never get the title right. The Emporium film.
Yeah.
And you've done a lot with Alan Bennett as well.
Yeah, I've done a lot with Alan Bennett. I'm just finishing an Alan Bennett, an adaptation of an Alan Bennett play at the moment called Hallelujah,
yes,
with Richard Eyre.
but looking back on your career, and we ask everyone this, is there any project that you look back on and in retrospect you regret not doing it?
Not doing it?
Yeah.
Gosh. No, I don't get offered that many films. Mostly I have to generate my own work. So, the criteria tends to be the other way around slightly, which is, can I get up every morning for a year and feel really passionate about this? Because that's what making a film is. It's getting up every morning for a year and thinking, yay, we're going to go and make some more of this film today. And, for me, life's a bit, it's hard enough as it is, but if you're not making films you care about, then, or working with people that you like working with, then frankly, let's go and do something else. So I look back on them all very fondly, actually, and there's not many. I'm pretty proud of them. I mean, as you say, it's a pretty eclectic mix, but I look back and I think, yeah, that was a good film. Hey, that was a good film. Actually, and that was very underrated, that film. So I think there are a few films on there. I mean, I think Venus, the film I made with Peter O'Toole and Leslie Phillips, I think that film is a classic movie. I hope people still watching that film in 50 years' time, because it seems to me it warrants it, Well,
going at the something diametrically opposed to what Venus is. Finally, we always ask some of our readers any question that they would like to know the answer to.
Yeah.
The one that's come up more than anything else is the Alan Partridge film.
Yeah.
So this was back in 2013 that you produced that.
You
know what the question is going to be. Is there going to be another? And I know it's Armando Iannucci's got a huge hand in say that, as well as Steve Coogan.
I think it's mostly going to be about Steve. And obviously, when we did Alpha Papa, he hadn't really had Alan out for a while. It was a kind of revival moment for him with Alan. And it was him trying on Alan with a slightly more middle-aged, different perspective, I suppose. And since then, I think, Alan's got his new show on BBC One. I mean, he's about to be at the O2 in a couple of weeks' time, isn't he?
Yeah.
I mean, he's out there doing arenas now.
Yeah.
So, I don't know. It will be up to Steve and the Gibbons twins, I suspect. But, I'm really pleased for them, because Rob and Neil Gibbons, who co-wrote Alpha Papa, they've managed to craft a situation with Steve now where they can channel Alan Partridge as much as he can. But there are still things that only Steve can adjudicate about Alan. For example, music. You could pick a track and he would tell you whether Alan liked that track or not. And you'd be hard put to know completely 100% whether you'd be right or not. But Steve always knows.
It's like that opening track that he's singing along to in the car in the opening scene.
When we shot that, I said to him that we were watching it back in the cutting room next to us. I said, that's going to be the opening title. He said, nah, we won't be using that. We'll come up with something better than that. I said, you won't come up with anything better than that. It's classic. Well, that's amazing. I mean, he just did that. We're on a low loader and camera crew on the side of the thing hanging off. And I mean, every time I see it, I think the comic timing in it is just brilliant.
Yeah,
such a brilliant performer.
There's a moment in it where I kind of think that's an ad lib. I think it's someone overtakes or
there's what you got your fog lights on for? There's no fog.
Brilliant, another brilliant ad lib. Thank you for your time, Kevin. I know you're
thank you, Simon. It's been
terrifically
really
busy. And I hope we can talk again sometime about I know Hallelujah is coming up soon.
Hallelujah will be out probably back end of the year. Yeah. So
hopefully
feel free
we
to get
can.
in touch. That's with Pathé, so you'll have to talk to Sophie at Pathé about that, but feel free.
Great. Thank you for your time, Kevin. Thank
All
you.
right, nice to talk to you.
And you. Thank you.